Hi, it's me, Chris Harder, and welcome back to Showboys, the podcast bringing you a glittery, gritty, full frontal glimpse into the world of boylesque. What is boylesque? We're gonna find out. So something I love about burlesque in general is that even though I think the community is largely very welcoming and accepting, that doesn't mean it can't be sassy. And I think my guest today is the perfect culmination of equal parts class, ass, and sass. He is a burlesque producer, performer, and MC. He's a meme master of Machiavellian machinations, an ally to scorpions and millipedes everywhere, a six-time burlesque top 50 nominee, the 2015 Mr. Exotic World, and the Golden Boy of Burlesque. Please welcome to the Showboys stage, Matt Finish. Hi, Matt.
Oh, thank you. Hi, that's probably the best intro I've ever had.
Well, thank you. I've been doing some deep dive Instagram stalking,
Of
so
course. Yeah.
yes. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm great. It's a lovely 100-degree day here in Tucson, Arizona. So always thrilling.
Wow. Can I be vulnerable and have a confession to you right
Sure.
to kick off the interview? I misread Tucson, and I've been having you down from Tuscon, Arizona for like
Tuscon,
the
Arizona.
past Tuscon,
It
Arizona.
happens all the time. We get a lot of Tucson, if you don't know how to pronounce the word.
Oh.
And actually, Tucson was the original. That was the Native American way to say that word before it became Americanized, and it is Tucson now. So know that if you say it wrong, it's probably closer to being right than you think.
There we go. Chris Harder, actually more right than he seems wrong. That'll be
There-
my new tagline.
I like that.
Well, I've already told you about this over emails and we were chatting before I hit record, but this podcast is all about boylesque, all of its different facets, the multitude of performers who are a part of the community. And I just thought to kick us off here, would you mind sharing with me and the listeners what's your definition of boylesque? And how would you describe your own performance aesthetic and persona on stage?
Oh wow! So when it comes to the definition of boylesque, which is always a controversial topic to everyone, I believe that it is burlesque performed in a male presenting persona,
Sure.
and that's it as on its plainest face. Boylesque is under the umbrella of burlesque. It's just a subset, like nerdlesque, like gorelesque. Any of the burlesque plus. Burlesque plus ballet, burlesque plus fire eating or circus or any of those things.
There's a gorelesque. Is this happening in Tucson?
No, in Colorado, there's this amazing performer. I mean, think Red Rum as well is also a gorelesque performer. But Dr. Bones has this amazing fan dance where he rips his ribs out and a bunch of skin comes with it, and it turns into fans, like silk fans.
Wow.
Yeah, that's gorelesque. It's less common to see, but it is always very striking. Like Red Rum, the one that comes to mind is she has a The Thing act where she starts in like a snowsuit and then strips down and she's like the monster from The Thing. It's super gross.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
gorelesque. Is it burlesque? Absolutely. Is it gross? Yes, it's very gory.
Okay, thank you. Not sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're
Gorelesque.
fine.
Just when you thought you couldn't reveal more, you can always reveal your rib
You
cage.
can
Literally.
always, rip out your internal organs. Yes.
Beautiful. Well, then, how would you describe your own performance aesthetic, Matt? And also, if someone has not seen you yet on stage, what can they expect from a Matt Finish performance?
Oh goodness. I am an absolute mutt of training. I trained as a professional ballet dancer and I was a professional ballet dancer for many years, and I have a lot of other dance training. I mean, I worked for Disney for quite a while as a parade performer. Um,
Oh,
you never know what you're going to get. It depends. I would say if you want to know what kind of performance I'm doing, look to the producer and see what they generally put on stage. Because I have ultra classic acts
yes.
where it's all suits and rhinestones and stuff. I mean, I've got acts where I'm Toto from The Wizard of Oz, who's horny for Dorothy. I've got a caterpillar where I do nothing, and I'm just like, that's the whole gag, is that I'm this very aloof caterpillar and I don't want to dance for you. I've got my 20-foot boa. I've got my endless boa, which is verging on 75 feet now, that are kind of comedy acts. So you never know. I will say it's always going to be some kind of dancey.
Okay. Yeah, you're an incredible dancer. I've actually only gotten to see you perform live a few times, usually at Burlesque Hall of Fame. How long have you been dancing? When did you start?
So I started taking ballet classes when I was 4.
Wow.
And for the record, I'm 38. I'll be 39 this year. And it was literally because my mother took me to a production of The Nutcracker when I was very little,
Oh.
and I wanted to wear the costumes. And I was told that the gateway to the costumes was I had to be a really good dancer. And so I was like, well, fine, because I'm gonna get those costumes. And the rest was history.
I love it. Do you have a Nutcracker number then as well?
I did the Nearly Naked Nutcracker, which was Vivian Vermouth and Red Snapper at the time, out in Texas, and I did the Arabian coffee. That's what they are. Yes, coffee as kind of a Arabian peacock number.
Okay.
But do I have an actual Nutcracker act that I perform regularly? No. I mean, I just did a Nutcracker, like a straight ballet Nutcracker last year. I still go to my hometown and perform. So it might hit a little too close to home. There's one thing. So I get asked a lot what my biggest pet peeve is, because of course I write a lot of pet
Oh,
peeves into my
yes.
unhelpful tips. And they say, well, what's like your biggest one? And it depends, like my biggest one personally, like for me, I hate seeing point work on stage
Really?
because I think usually it's done very poorly.
Oh.
Well, there's 2 reasons for it. One, it's really hard. I mean, I danced professionally on point for a long time. It is not easy to do. And unless you are consistently training on point, like taking classes regularly, not just, oh, I'm going to throw my shoes on and rehearse a little, your point skills are probably not up to par anymore. And also the stages that we perform on as burlesque dancers are not very conducive to point. They're generally very slippery.
Yeah.
And so I get mad when I just see like, biscuit feet and busted point shoes, or clearly brand new point shoes that aren't broken in very well. And if you're just going to go out there and point your foot and do bourrées or a piqué arabesque, what are you doing? Like for an example of a really amazing performer who uses point work in her acts is Lola Demure.
Okay.
Out in San Diego. She's a professional ballerina. She's training all the time. She's just posted a video of getting back in shape to do her Black Swan act, and it's a lot of hardcore ballet. Like she's actually doing a variation on point, and I think that's really amazing. I mean, I've walked out of shows before because I can't stand watching a performer waddle around in point shoes and just like stick their foot on point with a bent leg and be like, ta-da! It just makes me crazy.
Right. Oh my God. Okay. My feet right now are just like curling underneath me.
I mean, I get it. It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. But since it is so personal to me as a decades long dancer,
Yeah.
when I see it done, even seeing it done in a mediocre way, not even a bad way, just mediocre, which is what I would call if you're just going to do bourrées a bunch. Why? What are you getting out of this? What is the audience getting out of this? The answer is probably nothing. You're doing it because it's like cool, and I'm just I hate it.
True. I'm blanking on their name. I performed. I don't even think she's actually in New York anymore. There was a burlesque performer who did a lot of point, but we were always doing it in these basically bar shows where there's like spilled drinks and you're dodging charcuterie boards. But she stayed on top of those shoes. As far as I could tell.
Well, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a performer fall. But generally, okay, so generally the only reason you'd see someone fall is if they were doing something, maybe more challenging than they're equipped for. And what do you normally see in acts at a point? Bourrées, which honestly anyone can do.
Oh.
If you're able to stand, you can get on point and do bourrées. Piqué arabesque, slightly more advanced because you're on one leg instead of two. But when I see really basic stuff like that, that's 90% of point work.
Okay.
In burlesque is Dolly Dinkle point work.
Dolly Dinkle. That just makes me think of Showgirls, the film, where the choreographer is like, Nomi, PK turn.
Yes, exactly. Well, you'll PK turn. You're getting fancy now. You're going to see a lot of those on stage. Yeah, so that's when it comes to dancing. I mean, I don't do a lot of ballet in my acts. For me personally, one, I don't have the long ballet body, my lines are a little shorter because I'm only 5'3". So I tend to lend that technique to jazz.
Okay. Well, you toured with Le Ballet Trockadero de Monte Carlo. Did I kind of pronounce that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you got it.
Was that kind of an entry point into burlesque for you, or what was the leap from dancing professionally to taking off your clothes while you do it?
Well, so I actually, while it wasn't burlesque, I was a go-go dancer in West Hollywood as an undergraduate in college back in the early 2000 aughts. And so I'd already kind of set foot in the more scandalous side of dance. And oh my God, I loved it. I used to dance at Tiger Heat, and that was
I didn't know. Was Tiger Heat a bar or was it a party?
it wasn't a bar. It was an event that they would hold at towards the end. It was at the Arena
Okay.
in West Hollywood. I don't even know if that venue still exists. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But after I moved to New York, which was in 2005, and joined the Trucks, that's where I learned how to be funny.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I didn't have comedy training, and I was cast in a lot of the jokey roles. If you've ever seen the Trucks and you see the joke swan that falls over, or if you see the sylph that falls off the stage because they're sleepwalking, that was me.
Okay.
Well, the director didn't like me very much.
Oh.
And he's brilliant. To be fair, he's brilliant. I was probably a pain in the ass, but he did not like me. And so I think he put me in those roles, well, not as a punishment, but because I just very distinctly recall one time he pulled me aside and made me repeat to him that I was the worst dancer in the company.
Oh my God.
Well, that's par for the course when you're a ballet dancer. But it was one of those things. I was like, oh, okay, I see how it is between us. And so he would put me in these roles, but then it turned out I was actually good at it. And then that's why I kept those roles.
I'm so glad that you rose above that. And also just to point out, I mean, burlesque performers can be crazy, but professional theater and dance folks are fucking insane sometimes.
Well, it's one of those now that I teach ballet in college. I teach college students, and some of them are aspiring professionals, and I have to give them those same reality checks. I don't say they're the worst dancer in my classes, but I do tell them, like, the rate to get in is low. You're getting older. Like, you have to work harder. Time is running out. Panic. Anyway, though, after I wouldn't say that I wish I had known about burlesque when I lived in New York, dancing for the Trucks.
Yeah.
It was very much there, but I didn't spend a lot of time in New York. I was on tour for most of the year, but it would have been very different. I might have ended up staying in New York instead of moving to Arizona for graduate school had I gotten into something like that instead. Who knows?
Sure.
Yeah, when I came to Arizona, I was still very much all ballet all day, every day. I mean, I did the other techniques, but ballet's number one for me, always. And I had a friend here. Her name is Philippa Rouge, and she was asking me all the time to come see the local burlesque show. And I had this vague idea of what burlesque was. Realizing it later, when I was a child, I had seen the Exotic World documentary.
Oh, yeah.
Probably on PBS or KQED or something. I'd seen it on TV, and I did not understand what I was seeing. I was very young. And there's the scene at the end where it's Dixie is kind of walking out on the ranch in Hellendale, and she's in this light blue, dressing robe, this sheer dressing gown, and the wind is blowing, and there's some narration, she's talking, and I, again, no context, thought, oh, that's so sad. These women were like showgirls. I thought I knew what a Vegas showgirl was. I was like, these were like Vegas showgirls, and they're too old to dance, and no one wants to see them, and so they have to go live in the desert. How sad.
Yes.
And so that was the only kind of intro I had. Again, no context.
I love that.
I had to burlesque. And I must have had this subconscious block about it. Plus, spending a Friday night staring at boobs was not my idea of a productive weekend.
Yeah.
I was strong-armed into seeing the show. It was in November of 2011. And my friend Philippa, she said, I bought you a ticket. I can't get a refund. It was $20. Don't make me waste $20.
Okay, Philippa.
Yeah, right. And so I went with her, and within 5 minutes of sitting down in the show starting, I leaned over to her and I said, we're going to do this. We're going to be up there. And lo and behold, someone was teaching a class starting, in like a month.
Nice.
And so I signed up for it. I did my first show March 8th of 2012.
That's amazing. And also, too, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's a misconception whenever I talk about burlesque with people who are not familiar with it. And I talk about these incredible legends of burlesque that we get to meet and hang out with and learn from at Burlesque Hall of Fame. I think just because of ageism, sexism, misogyny, all of the wonderful qualities of our American culture, people just assume that at a certain point, nobody wants to see you anymore. And that is just so not the case when it comes to it, especially the neo burlesque movement and just the resurgence and the love of these women who gave us so much. So, but I mean, I get, not having any context from that. Also, you said you were a child, right?
I was probably 7 or 8 years old, maybe.
Goddamn 8-year-olds.
Yeah, I definitely did not understand what I was seeing.
Right. Your name is matte finish, and I was thinking earlier today that you're so much more than a matte finish to me. You're like a lustrous, effervescent, high gloss finish. Why the matte finish?
Well, I wish there was some great story, but there's not. When I was taking this burlesque class taught by Fanny Galore here in Tucson, she gave us homework. We had like a little binder and we were supposed to research, we were supposed to research like 10 different burlesque performers and get their bios and write about them and what we liked or didn't like about, how they performed to influence our own performing. And she said, "Oh, you also have to come up with a stage name. So bring in some stage names." And I was just kind of sitting at home and I was printing photos for something else on matte photo paper.
Mm.
And I was like, "Oh, matte finish. That's great." I mean, there were a couple other names. I think I also I knew matte finish was going to be the winner. As soon as I heard it, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. I could be a matte." And I think the other name I brought up was Chase Lounge, which I believe there's a Chase Lounge now.
I think there is too.
Yeah, but back then we were still using the Red Hot Annie list.
What's the Red Hot Annie list?
I'm pretty sure it was Red Hot Annie had like a literal webpage that was just a big list of names that were already taken.
Oh, that's smart.
Like like people try it every once in a while. The burlesque directories, they bless their hearts.
Right.
I know Leslie Zemeckis did one. I think they tried to do one maybe in Colorado. Like they tried to start one. BurlyCon, I believe, has also dabbled. But there used to be the Yahoo groups for it. Yeah, I got in right at the end of the Yahoo groups to check, and there was no matte finish. And so that was it. Every once in a while, I still have to beat a new matte finish down.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I get it. Maybe once, twice a year, someone will message me and be like, "Hey, there's another one." And they'll be in burlesque. I remember there was one performer in particular. I will not say where they're from, but I messaged them and I said, "Hey, what a great name. It's already been taken and I'm kind of well known. So pick something else. Don't be matte, don't be finish." Their response was, "Well, I don't think we're ever going to overlap." To which I said, "I don't have a lot going on. I'm going to move to your city and make sure we do."
Right. Then all of a sudden, as they're typing that message, they hear a knock at the door.
Yeah, right.
And it's you.
And so that was probably the most extreme because I was like, no, we're not playing this game. We're not doing this. You didn't do your homework. Sucks to suck. Like, that's my name, period.
Yeah. And you are very well known. And I mean, I would think that if a performer actually got a message like that, because it sounds like you were very gracious too, then they would just consider it. They would be thankful for it because who would want to already,
I hear about it all the time of performers who take names. I mean, like we know there are some more famous older, the revivalists and things, performers who share names or very similar names. But nowadays, I still see it. And it's incredible when they're like, "Meh, I don't care." And it's like, there's unless you own your name, there's not a whole lot you can really do other than reach out to their producers of their shows and say, "Hey, don't book them."
Yeah, big no. My performer name is my real name, which is Chris Harder. And there's a couple of Chris Harders. One is a professional life coach who actually has a huge following on Instagram.
Okay.
And the other is a children's theater actor. And
No.
I feel like I wonder if they ever are like, "Hey, I just Googled you." And
Yep. I'm sure it happens a lot.
This like photoshopped picture of your butthole just popped up.
Oh, tell me they don't look like you. Oh no.
No,
Your
I don't think
doppelgangers
so.
out there. Well, matte finish, I cannot own the name matte finish, unfortunately. I tried, because there is an Australian rock band from the 80s called Matte Finish.
Oh, spelled M-A-T-T?
Exactly the same, just like the name. And it's funny, none of their members are named Matte Finish at all. They that's just their name, but they've had it for longer than I've been alive. So that's why I have like the XO Matte Finish everywhere.
Oh, okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense. God damn it, Australia. So you moved from New York. You're in
Mhm.
Tucson,
Yeah.
Arizona. What is the burlesque scene like? I've been to Arizona once to visit my grandparents' getaway
Yep.
home.
Yeah, there's a lot
What
of old people here. Yeah.
yeah, what is the scene like? How would you describe it?
So we are hardy, is how what I would say, and it's very
Yeah.
different. There are three major burlesque locales here. You have Tucson,
Mhm.
which is the oldest. I mean, there's been burlesque all over Arizona for a very long time. We have a history going back into the legends. We used to have a burlesque bar downtown in Tucson called Talk of the Town that Bambi Jones performed at. She's the one who turned me on to it. She performed there in the
Oh.
50s. And it no longer exists, although the mahogany bar top does. It was purchased before the old Push building was knocked down, and it's now in our famous Hotel Congress. It's the longest continuous mahogany bar in Arizona, and it's the burlesque bar. But Desiré D'Amour, who is the CFO for the Burlesque Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
she, with a couple of other performers, almost 20 years ago at this point, started burlesque in Arizona, in Tucson, like got it going again. And so we have a couple of shows here in Tucson. We've got a couple of shows up in Phoenix, which has a very healthy scene up there. I mean, I don't know if you know Maximilians.
Yes, yeah, we performed together a long time ago.
Yeah, she co-produces up there. She co-produces Spellbound Burlesque up there, and we also have Romanticy Cabaret. Hump Day Burlesque is up there. Cleodore Matthews has a show. Yeah, so Pyra Sutra is running around up there, I believe, still. And then we also have it's a quirky scene, and I love it. Bisbee, Arizona, which is a little old mining town way south of Tucson, and Tucson is very south. Bisbee is farther south,
Bisbee.
and they have a wonderful scene. Bisbee, if you ever read a J.A. Jance book about Joanna Brady, they all take place in Bisbee, Arizona. I read her books when I lived in California. So moving out here, I'm like, I gotta go see this quaint town. And it literally is a town built in the valley between two hills.
That's so cool. Also, I love Bisbee Burlesque, just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, they have Cha Velour.
Okay.
She used to live in Vegas. She was like she started the Las Vegas Burlesque Festival back in the day. She lives down in Bisbee and does and performs down there. And then Sonia Rita's down there. She owns Grand Burlesque at the Bisbee Grand Hotel. Like, I mean, there's a lot of burlesque in Arizona. We took a beating, it's true, during the pandemic, but so did everybody.
Yeah.
And we've largely come back. So I think that's really wonderful. Yeah, we've probably got around 100 or so performers in the state.
That's great, and I think, living in New York, I think I take for granted just that there is always a show going on, or not that it's easy by any means, but it's kind of built into, somewhat at least, into the nightlife. But does it feel that way now in Tucson, especially after the pandemic? That I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's just as big as part of nightlife as anything else that's happening?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say that burlesque, especially, I mean, I speak mostly about Tucson. We recovered from the pandemic. People were
Mhm.
ready to come back. The shows are always sold out. They're always huge. But compared to maybe our drag scene, we're not as well known. We've got a lot of national title holders in drag just in Tucson alone, and then Phoenix as well. I mean, we have Tempest du Jour from RuPaul's Drag Race lives in Tucson and
Yes.
teaches at the University of Arizona. So we get overshadowed quite a bit by that. And burlesque here, you're not going to find a show every week. You're going to find a show once a month.
Sure. That's hard though too. I feel like and I've had a lot of friends go through RuPaul's Drag Race, and I'm really
Mhm.
happy for them because it's such a career changer. But it does, I mean, it feels like sometimes the way to get a sold out burlesque show, at least in New York, is to book a RuPaul's Drag Race queen to come and do
Oh,
like a 2-minute lip sync.
sure. Well, we've tried blending. There's actually one show in Tucson that blends. It's like a variety show, and it's
Yeah.
hosted by two drag queens, and they have some burlesque in addition to other performers. I've performed at a lot of drag shows. I used to do drag, and then I've done a burlesque at a lot of drag shows. It does, to my way of thinking, if a show is set up for drag, it is not set up for burlesque. The tipping culture is especially brutal.
Yes.
Because drag queens walk around, collect the money, have a break for choreography, walk around, collect the money. Burlesque, it's like, please don't interfere. I'm doing something.
Yeah, I know for me, it's like, you don't know how hard and how long it's taking me to learn what is a rudimentary combination. So I cannot break it to come and grab that dollar bill out of your,
Grab your sad dollar. I had
right.
a guy once when I was performing at a drag bar in Phoenix. I was doing burlesque and he held out his sad dollar and I was not anywhere near him. He walked onto the stage.
No. Was he
And
gay?
I was just, yeah. Oh, the gay guys are, unfortunately for me, in my experience, the worst. They have the worst etiquette.
Let's talk about that because I also have so many. I think we're gonna bond through trauma of performing for
Yeah.
gays. I mean, for me, it either goes surprisingly well or it goes unsurprisingly abysmal. But what's been your experience like with the gays?
I get groped quite a bit.
Mm,
So I mean, honestly, I don't know that there's ever been a show where I haven't been felt up at least a little bit.
hmm
And it's usually gay guys first and then middle-aged women second.
Like in the middle of your number?
I've only been felt up once in the middle of a number, and that was a gay guy who literally came up to me while I was doing like a back bend and grabbed my crotch and squeezed my codpiece.
What?
Yeah, and security did nothing until I complained later. That was wild. And then a lot of times, especially people don't really understand burlesque. The general public, they don't get it. Especially if your MC doesn't intro what's about to happen. And if I've been cast doing one of my more odd acts, I performed at Phoenix Pride a few years ago, and I have this act called Butter, and it's about the movie Butter from 2012.
Oh, I don't know it.
It's about Oh, you need to watch it. It's
Okay.
Jennifer Garner, Ty Burrell, Olivia Wilde, Allison Green, Hugh Jackman, Alicia Silverstone, like killer cast. And it's about butter carving at the Iowa State Fair. And it'll change your life. And there's this gospel song at the end called Butter, the Greatest Gift in Life. And I do a burlesque act to that where I strip out of a butter yellow choir robe into a chef's thing and dance around with pancakes and butter streamers, and then I take off that and I'm wearing a shimmy belt made of butter sticks, and I have butter tassels and assholes that I twirl. And I remember coming out, and there's this huge tent of like 1,000 people watching me, and everyone is just staring at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And I hear one person go, "Oh, the movie," and it was like, okay, this is just for you, sir. And it was dead quiet the whole time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It was pearls before swine. Lost. The greatness was lost.
So, when it comes to the gay audiences, also because drag is so dominant, burlesque doesn't have a lot of space in the drag sphere. I feel like it usually goes the other way. You bring drag into burlesque. You don't bring a ton of that's not to say it hasn't happened. You have amazing drag-lesque performers out there. Even I think of like Violet Chachki.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Does stuff like that, and it's incredible. But they're single-digit performers. It's not pervasive. And so like something like when I did EOI, it was bad.
So can you explain to the listeners what EOI is?
EOI is the Entertainer of the Year pageant, and it is run like every other drag pageant. Well, no, it's not run like every other drag pageant. It is run similar to a burlesque competition, but a drag pageant. And you compete in your city, and then you compete in your state, and then you go, I think some places have regionals, and then you go all the way to the nationals, which are in Louisville. Kentucky. And I mean, it's a standard competition. There's an interview portion, there's swimwear and evening wear and all that. And I did it in 2017. And I had a great time at the local and state level because the promoter was very enthusiastic about burlesque.
Mm-hmm.
And made sure, like, I'd reached out and I said, is this just a drag pageant? And they said, oh no, it's for everybody. It's if you can do a talent, you can be in this pageant. It is a drag pageant. I don't want to hear anybody say anything else about it. It's a drag pageant. When I got to nationals, let me tell you, it was perhaps the second worst I've ever been treated as a performer.
No.
Well, one, the theater wasn't even done. Like, it was a new theater,
Mm-hmm.
and they were still laying carpet, and it wasn't done. The building was incomplete, and we're in there. I'm like, well, this checks out for the seedier side of drag and burlesque. Yeah, the venue's not even done. The judging panel were all only drag all day, every day, had no background in anything else. Didn't understand drag, didn't understand burlesque, didn't like burlesque. The MC, so the night of the, there were 2 nights, and the night of the performances, the talent portion, the MC got roofied.
What?
Yeah, live. We were all like, wow, she's really drunk. And I know that's some performer's thing, like that's their shtick.
Right.
No, turns out she'd gotten a drink from the audience, smart, and was roofied. And so was swapped out mid-show, like during my act. I got this like terrible intro, and then they swapped her out. The drag queen that they literally pulled from the audience to host. Afterwards, someone was saying something, and I remember I was literally just off stage having performed, and she goes, oh, what, you want to do burlesque? You can't do that. Only women do burlesque.
Oh, God. Thanks.
After I just performed, I was like, also, you're a drag queen. What are you talking about? It was terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I wrote a big post about it, too. And like 5 minutes after I'd posted about how poorly I was being treated, I got a call from one of the organizers asking if I would consider taking it down if they apologized to me. And I said, you mean like publicly online? And they're like, no. So it's still up there somewhere if you want to go back and look for it.
I am going to go. I'm going to do a deep dive. Well, I'm truly sorry to hear that happened to you. And, it can happen at any show. And I do think like 99.9% of an MC's job is doing justice to the performers that they're going to bring out and making sure the audience is prepped and primed as much as they can be for what they're going to see. And yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, like in gay bars, a drag queen has been like, "Who wants to see some dick? Because come to this," you know what I mean? And then I like come out and not that I'm like doing a flapper dance or anything, but it's not the like
it's not that
hardcore stripper that which is great, but definitely not what
you're doing. Well, and then also it was EOI for me was a confluence of a lot of. I mean, it's unfortunate. It was bad timing that they didn't have the venue done. It's unfortunate that someone drugged the MC. That's not her fault. You know, that sucks. That's awful. I mean, that's literally a crime. But it was an organizational failing that while they were trying to recruit performers from a broad variety, they did not have a adjudication panel. They didn't have a panel capable of evaluating a broad variety of talent.
Sure.
And that was the real, that was what did it for me, is I got so much negative feedback. And literally, I mean, I remember literally I had one person said, he's wearing too much makeup. He needs to butch up at a drag pageant. Because, well, this was, the male portion.
Right.
This was the Mr. category. And I was like, excuse, who do you think you are? Like, I mean, I don't know what changes they made. EOI doesn't exist in Arizona anymore.
Okay.
I think it went on for one more year, but the inaugural group, we'd had such a negative experience with it. And we were all kind of well-known performers that in Arizona that no one else really wanted to touch it after that.
Yeah.
I mean, I did EOI because I started performing in 2012 and I made it my instant goal to do BHOF.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate to have competed and then won in 2015.
Yes.
And then after that, I was like, I don't feel like it's really appropriate for me to compete. BHOF is held as kind of the top honors.
Right.
So I was like, I did one more competition, which was Golden Legends, that I'd entered prior to doing BHOF. So I did one more. But then after that, I was like, I really shouldn't you know, I got my pat on the back. I should let other people get theirs. And so when EOY came along, I was like, oh, this is not in our world. I can move over here where Behoff doesn't mean anything.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. That's very generous of you.
Well, I was like, I like competition.
Well, so on the note of long posts, you are a meme master, and I love your unhelpful tips for burlesque performers. How did that start?
Ooh. So again, I'll hold back a little. Unhelpful tips came from two things. One, this was right around so I started, I have this thing with these dates. It was June 10th, 2017 was the very first unhelpful tip. And I remember that it was, if you're having trouble keeping your pasties on, consider using an adhesive. It was right after like the Will and Kate wedding, and Pippa Middleton with her butt. And she'd written this book about party planning, because that's what the Middletons business was like party planning, event planning. And I never read it, but apparently it just got lampooned left, right, and center because it was full of really not necessarily useless, but very common sense things. Like if you want to know how many people are coming to your party, use RSVPs.
Right.
And immediately a Twitter account sprang up called Pippa Tips. And it was just terrible, stupid advice. Like, if you want to know what the weather's like, stick your head out the window. And I was thinking like, that really struck me as quite funny, because it wasn't punching down, it was punching sideways.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, your tips are not like cruel, but they're
Well, I try not to. It's supposed to be the mistakes, foibles that we all share that we can make fun of together. And I am guilty of most of my unhelpful tips. Like, people say, where do you get them from? And there are guest submissions and things, and there are things that I see. Most of them I'm like, oh yeah, remember that one time when I did this? That was dumb. And then that's the tip. But also, I'd been to a festival where I was extremely poorly treated.
what one?
That's the number one worst experience, was this one festival. Not no crimes were committed, no assault, no nothing. But I was very badly taken care of. I was definitely lied to by the producers. Like, it was.
Do you want to tell me do you want to say their full names?
Awful. And tell you no, because they've definitely been dragged. They've gone through it without my help, and they deserve it. Among many publications, one of the producers had started making like an advice column.
Oh wow.
For newbies, and I was like, you should not be talking at all about how to be a professional or how to conduct yourself. Like, I can say from personal experience, you're full of it. It's clearly a do as I say, not as I do. And I was like, well, I'm going to flip that. And I combined this Pippa tips, like common sense things, with the burlesque advice, and made unhelpful burlesque tips from Matte Finish. And it's evolved, definitely. It used to be advice that was worthless, like stupid things, like things that we all knew already. And then it became bad advice. Like, what's more secure than sewing? Staples. Just terrible. Don't ever do these things. Terrible advice. And then it started going more into what it is now, which is the satire of these situations. And I've used it to call attention to issues, like when the whole Red Velvet Burlesque show thing happened. Then I, just moving along with kind of how social media works, I made my way into memes. I used to only do Unhelpful Meme Monday, and then everything else was a text post. And now I do mostly memes, because our attention spans are too short.
Yeah, well, the memes are so funny, and really, like, that's really all like humanity is right now, is just memes. We're just on shuffle mode. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the greatest hits scrambled and scrambled again. You have a couple about knee drops. Do you do knee drops?
No. I'll do drop splits. I can drop split all day long. I personally avoid knee drops because they hurt so much. And every time I see a performer do them, I'm like, oh, you don't care about yourself enough.
Let's talk about one of my favorite unhelpful burlesque tips, and quite possibly just like one of the cultural touchstones of the neo burlesque community. Tell me about Suzy Von Strip.
Oh God, Suzy Von Strip. So here's the thing: I did not invent her,
Right.
at all. She's not my creation. I hope we never find out who did it. Maybe after they're dead. I don't know, in a few decades.
That'll be their eulogy. It'll be,
So
I was Suzy Von Strip.
it was me. And then everyone will be like, wait, I thought it was Matt Finnick. Suzy Von Strip. I adore Holli Mae Johnson and 21st Century Burlesque magazine.
Yeah.
I love 21st Century Burlesque. I mean, I remember I have one of the few hard copies of when Holli Mae actually made 21st Century Burlesque magazine as a magazine. And I became kind of obsessed with it. And I'm a huge fan of the top 50. If you've never seen my giant conspiracy theory web of top 50 winners, my giant spreadsheet where I've tracked them all, going all the way back to the first one. Like I got all the statistics every year. I look forward to it.
What do you mean? Do you like, is this like your version of the NFL, like fantasy football?
Fantasy, yeah. So I have literally made a spreadsheet. It's got there's been around, I don't know, 220 or so individual performers ever on the top 50 in all the years it's been going. And I have them laid out in alphabetical order on a spreadsheet. The years are going across. I have their rank under which year. I have if it was a tie. I've highlighted what their highest rank ever was. Every year I highlight the debuts on the list. I put on it the biggest jump.
Oh.
You know, someone who was 50 and is now 12, you know, huge jump. I know them. If there are any exotic world winners, I've got them separate in their own thing. And then I think at this point, there are only 3 performers who have been on the list every single year. And because I mean, just a couple years ago, there were like 9 and it just fell off,
right?
Especially during the pandemic, as some of our stalwart performers were unable to travel. And maybe weren't as saturated on social media that their influence, it's about influence, and they weren't in front of our faces anymore. But anyway, I have this whole giant spreadsheet that I look forward to every year and do all these statistics. But anyway, sorry, way off track. But Holly was doing these kind of anonymous answers to questions. And one of the questions was, do you feel, it was the hobbyist versus professional. Oh, don't even get me started about professional burlesque. Do you feel that there should be a pay difference between hobbyists and professionals? And somebody must really set them off. And they wrote, and they're not from America. They're not from the United States, because they wrote with an OU, Labor.
Oh.
So I was like, are you Canadian? But somebody really took offense, and they wrote, yes, there should be, because why should I, with my 16 years of training and experience, be making the same as Suzy Von Strip with her 6 months? And that made me crazy, mostly because as a ballet dancer, we're told about how we have to pay our dues nonstop, and it's bull. And even as a burlesque performer, one time when I was new, I'd been in it for maybe 6 months, I had another performer get mad because they thought I was taking their spots in a show.
Oh, God.
And leaned over during this we had kind of a roundtable meeting, leaned over and said, no offense to the newbies, but some of you haven't paid your dues. And my response was, I've been on stage longer than you've been alive. Don't talk to me about dues.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, many burlesque performers all come from different performance backgrounds. Yeah.
But there's no such thing. It doesn't even matter. That's the big thing. Dues don't exist. It's not a thing you have to do. It doesn't exist. If you're a good performer, you're a good performer, and it doesn't matter if you have 0 training, as long as you're good. That's it. And that's what made me really mad about Suzy Von Strip. And she took on a life of her own. That post blew up. There was a website made. There was an Instagram account. There was a Twitter. There was a Facebook page, and none of them were me.
Yeah, I mean, I found it on your website, and there's been so many different memes.
Yes, I did the history of Suzy Von Strip.
Yeah. I will say, so on that poll that Holli Mae Johnson had, 74% said yes, they do think that there should be different rates, and 26% said no. Yeah. That's not to argue for it or against it. And I agree. I think ultimately talent is what determines rate.
Well, I'll say to those 74% of people, fight me, because you're wrong. We see it. It's a very hard thing to work burlesque is a performance art. It is a performing art. And it's very, very difficult for a lot of people to invest so much time and money to be mediocre. And it hurts. It sucks. It's the worst. but it's what happens. So this is my hot take on burlesque. Like, whenever, have you seen that meme? I've never done it because I don't want to. I don't want to start it. But that meme, it's the Flynn Rider meme with all the swords around his head, and it said, "What's your opinion that's going to get you like this?"
Oh, yes, yes.
Mine is, I'd say, pretty much every time I've ever heard somebody complaining and saying, you don't have to be blank, have blank, whatever blank, to be good, to be a good performer. You don't have to have the most rhinestones. You don't have to have dance training. You don't have to have, you don't have to network to be a great burlesque performer. You always silently add, but it helps.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Anytime you hear that, and I hear it all the time, and I'm just like, "Ooh, shut up, Matt, finish, you're gonna get in trouble." But that's at the heart of that whole pay disparity. Plus, when it comes to being a professional performer, I think what most people are using under that guise of what makes you a professional is that you are or at least attempting to conduct yourself in a professional manner. You're not. So few performers are actually making their living as a professional burlesque performer.
Well, yes, and I'm really glad you said that too, because it's, I mean, what that word means, yeah, it differs to so many different people. You know, am I less of a professional burlesque performer because it doesn't pay all of my bills, but I do live by myself, so then I have more bills to pay? You know, it's like it's not really
Right.
worth trying to parse out, like, if you make X amount of money, then you're considered a professional. If anything, I think other people determine whether or not you are professional by, how much work you're actually getting or being offered, or I mean, I don't know. I don't want to also stick my neck out for it either.
Well, for me, I think that 99% of performers are hobbyists. You might be a well-paid hobbyist, but you're a hobbyist. This, it's not your primary source of income. If I That's for me, when I think of a professional performer, you're making burlesque your primary source of income, and that is extremely rare. Most professional burlesque performers doing it full time, they are not just doing burlesque. They're teaching, they are doing other content streams, you know, to get that money in. They have day jobs, or they have really wealthy spouses. Like, I for me, I always laugh when I see that debate, because I'm like, you are behaving professionally, you are not a professional.
So, if that's your line of thinking, do you feel that you are a hobbyist burlesque performer?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I am 100% a hobbyist. I don't depend on performing to make my living or even pay a chunk of my bills. It is a hobby, despite the fact that I have to pay income tax on it. I do make enough. It's different, everywhere, but I make more than $600 a year doing burlesque. That is the standard for income tax in Arizona. So I do pay income tax on it, but it's still absolutely a hobby for me.
And that's totally, also, I just want to put out there, that is totally valid, and I'm not trying to change your mind on that either.
Yeah.
I respect you for saying that, because I love that you have high standards and that you also hold yourself to those standards. I think that says a lot about you as a person and a performer. I just would never think of you as a hobbyist performer. And I guess in a way I don't think of myself as that either. But what were you gonna say?
Well, the just now where a lot of people get like their backup about
Sure.
being called a hobbyist, that's not to say you don't behave professionally or perform at a level comparable to professional performers. The full timers who it's make or break for them. You can absolutely. I am a professional dancer. I was a professional ballet dancer, and I teach performance and all that. So the level of what I'm putting out is professional. The way I conduct myself, dealing with bookings and gigs and traveling and all that, is professional.
Mm-hmm.
But burlesque is a hobby. I bring a professional skill set to my hobby. And I feel like that's most burlesque performers. You can bring your professionalism into your hobby. And I think that is the vast majority of performers. And
Mm-hmm.
we throw around things like, I mean, all the time you hear it, my burlesque career. They don't mean that. There's just not really a better word. I mean, it might be more appropriate to say your tenure in the art of burlesque.
My burlesque tenure.
my tenure here, my time here
Mhm.
in burlesque, but we say career because that's kind of the closest thing we've got to it. And I feel it's the same way with professional. We promote the idea of professionalism in burlesque, and so we're not afraid to use that word. But when I see the average burlesque performer, they're not professionals. They are maybe professional in their behavior and their approach, but they're not professional burlesque performers.
Sure. I get all that. I completely
Yeah,
see. I do disagree, but I see where you're coming from. I think in a way because I
yeah,
think like yes, at the end of the day, I mean, we live in a capitalist society and technically where we make our money is in a sense our career, right? Like there's I don't know. I guess there's you could say it in so many different ways, but yeah, I get
sure.
the nuts and bolts of that. I do think of though like performers like Dita Von Teese, for example, who is not necessarily, I mean, if we're going by that kind of outline, and this might be, I don't know this, I'll just go on the record as saying I'm not best friends with Dita Von Teese and I don't have access to her tax records. But my understanding is that she makes a lot of money, not necessarily from touring or performing, but from her lingerie line, from her
Absolutely.
furniture wares. Anyway, I guess this is to say, like, I don't think
So
she would.
you could say that maybe someone like Jeez Louise or Tita Bonito, who make their living performing, are more professional than Dita Von Teese.
Oh, but say you have a performer who is making their living mostly from burlesque, and then they have a bad month, and then they
Yeah,
like rely on their OnlyFans or something like that.
yeah.
Are they switching careers then? Is it a career switch?
Mid-month, why not? We can have a midlife crisis. You can have a mid-month crisis.
Here's the thing that I think about a lot though. In the age that we live in, especially now, with social media being a dominant factor sometimes in a person's bookability, and this isn't even burlesque, this is pretty much any kind of aspect of entertainment. I can think of shows, especially when I was in Europe, where I was backstage with a performer who packed the house, asses in the seat, sold the tickets, people there to see them, and not really that strong. And that's not to shade anybody. I mean, so for me, I guess, because I had to really think a lot about this, I think a professional to me comes from a lot of different areas. It is talent and the ability to entertain. It is, you know, to a lesser degree, to
Yeah.
somewhat of a degree, like getting paid for that work. And there's a sense of like a professional attitude, I guess. But
Mhm.
I see your hand, Matt, finish, and I guess that's where I'll lay mine down.
No, I mean I agree with I agree with a lot of the points that you're saying, but I think that kind of spirals into the whole idea of professionalism and how and I don't think that it's a bad thing that we have a lot of performers out there who call themselves professional, even though I wouldn't personally consider them professionals. What does that matter? Because there's just not that many of them. So I think most of the time I'm hiring hobbyists, but I
Mhm.
also like the idea there's that thing that went around on like Tumblr back in the day, and it made its way to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and it's the uh, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life until you start charging for it, and then it's a job and you hate it. And that does happen a lot in burlesque. Once people start saying, "This is my profession. I am a professional performer," you have this obligation then
Mhm.
to grind and hustle and sacrifice to do shows maybe you don't want to do or create acts that you're not passionate about or spend money that you don't want to spend and you can box yourself in. Maybe you want to do weird shit, but that's not going to make you as much money as the classic stuff.
Mhm.
And suddenly the profession of it can take away the fun of it being a hobby. The
Yeah.
stakes are higher if it's your job.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I also don't want to spiral into the professionalism debate. But I was thinking also, so back to Miss Von Strip, little
Oh God,
So
Suzy.
right. Well, here's the thing I was thinking, and this is giving the person who posted this the benefit of the doubt, right? And I feel like as I'm explaining this, people are gonna be like, so he's the one that posted it. And I'm
So
not.
it was.
This is
I said,
right.
do you spell things? Do you spell labor with an OU?
I don't, but I do spell glamour with a U because I think it's more glamorous.
I also do that.
Do
So
you? Okay, all right. So
yeah,
it could have also been Matt
it could have.
saying
I could have set
it.
myself up for success. You never know.
Right. But here's the thing. I feel like, to me, if we're giving that person the benefit of the doubt, when they posted that, I feel like maybe what they were trying to say is they don't think it's fair for someone who just started and does not have the chops to be getting paid what someone who has been in it for a long time and is excelling the same rate. But again, it's like there are so many factors that just like go into that.
I completely agree with you. I think
Mhm.
that's the mindset that they had as well, that they were
Mhm.
seeing someone that, for whatever reason, they deemed as less worthy to be paid on the same scale as them. But the cynic in me says, maybe you don't know how good you are. And I don't mean that in like the shining star way. I mean that in the, uh-oh, here comes a reality check way. Or maybe you also aren't equipped to evaluate how good they are. And
Yeah.
that's what really that's what upset me. It's you. I mean, not all performers are created equal. It is a fact. There are performers who are more talented, performers who are less talented, and there will be times when they make the same amount of money, cough
Mhm.
local shows, but there's nothing wrong with that. And if you truly, I think if you truly are an exceptional talent, if you are that headliner, if you it's the combination of, like you were saying, professionalism, talent, know-how, charisma, all of those things. If you have all those things, you're not going to be worried about making the same amount as Suzy Von Strip, because it's not even going to be a question. You're going to be paid more anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and that was kind of my final 2 cents to add too, is, and again, I think social media is a great thing. I think we all need to use it in the ways that feel beneficial to us. But sometimes I know for myself, when I'm getting worked up about something and I look at something in my drafts and I like type it and delete it and type it and delete it, later that day I think about all the other things I could have been doing with my time, like fixing my costumes, adding more rhinestones, washing a costume. How about that? I mean, you know,
Living dangerously, watch those costumes.
I know, I know. But thank you for were you going to add something else?
No, I mean, no, it's fine. No, I'm all good.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I saw you with the hot dog the other day on Twitter, so
Oh, you did.
you
How'd
you
you?
busted out the hot dog costume again.
I
Yes,
did bust it
I
out,
I do enjoy that costume a lot.
and I did wash and repair a lot of that costume because it's usually like 1 week in July where everybody's like, "Hey, how about that hot dog?" And I have to be like, "Okay, let me remember the choreography and polish."
They'll never know if you make it. Everything's a solo. You can do whatever you want. As long as you end up naked, they don't care. The audience is easy. The audience is the least difficult part to navigate of burlesque. As long as they get to see some skin at the end, they'll clap for anything.
But
It's the other performers you got to watch out
the
for. But the
professional in
professional.
me, Matt Finish wants. Oh my God, yes, the professional in me wants to make sure it's the best that it can be.
There it is. See that, but that's the professionalism that you're bringing, and that's I think. I mean, all performers should have that. All performers should. You can't rest. You can't rest on your laurels and say, "Well, I did this one time, so I must be amazing." No, no, no. We have to keep pushing. That's the professionalism that I think we do need in burlesque. But again, that's not to say that makes us professional. That just makes us better performers.
All right, you heard it here, listeners.
I will not budge. They are
No,
hobbyists.
I love that, and I 110% respect that about you. So I'm here for it. You want to tell me about your scorpions, you little weirdo?
I currently have 6 scorpions as pets. 2 Asian forest scorpions, a mature red claw sonoran, and 3 of her babies. And then I had a dictator scorpion, which was Brutus, the famous Brutus that this tattoo is actually of. And it was literally an impulse. I went into a pet store, like a PetSmart, during the pandemic, just like looking around. I think I was waiting to get help to get some fish. I wanted like a neon tetra or something. And all of a sudden, I see this little black thing scurrying around in one of their display cases. And of course, I walked on up to it, and it was this huge black scorpion. And I was like, that is so cool. Like, it's so cool. And I could tell also that it was the wrong environment for him. But I was like, that's amazing. And I asked them, I was like, somebody come over here, help me, tell me about this. And they said, oh, yeah, we're not going to touch that. I was like, but can you tell me about it? They go, oh, we just have been having trouble getting pets in. So we started accepting bugs, and I had to have him. It was just so, I mean, I've never kept bugs. It never occurred to me to have a tarantula or a scorpion or anything like that. And he had so much personality. He was so feisty.
Yeah.
And when I had to watch videos to learn how to handle him. I was literally like, how to handle a scorpion safely without dying. and learned. And it was terrifying. The first few times that I was working with him, I literally just kind of practiced grabbing his tail and until I got comfortable with it. And then it turned into, I put him on my arm, and then it turned into I put him on my shoulder. And then I started doing, I have several spicy photo sets of him running around on my butt. What? Yeah, he got close. He put a foot on it. I was like, ooh. But I'm not moving for nothing, because that's the last place in the world I want to get pinched or stung. But he was amazing. I mean, I would do shoots with him on my face and he'd fall asleep on my forehead because it was warm. He would just curl up. And it was so cute. Like, they're not smart, bugs. They don't really have a recall or anything like that, but they do have personalities. They can be a little more aggressive or a little sweeter. And Brutus was just, he was amazing. He was so calm and he would react so well. If I needed his tail up for a picture, I could just like tease him a little bit and he'd put the tail up. If I needed him to face a certain way, like I did a whole Christmas shoot with him. I made him a Christmas stocking and I got a little fireplace with a little Christmas stocking and I got him to pose and he would hold it. Like, it was amazing. The new ones don't do that. They're all mean, but
you're like a dance mom, a scorpion mom.
And I love them. I do miss Brutus, of course, but my new scorpions, they're hysterical. They're always trying to escape, and I have a male and a female, and I want to like try and introduce them to each other so they could be friends. And we'll see. I'm gonna put a screen in one of the cages and let them like smell each other through that, without trying to kill each other. But yeah, no, I got way into the bugs. Yeah.
That just made me think, my boyfriend keeps wanting to introduce our cats. I'm like, oh, it feels like so much work. But now listening to you talk about the potential of introducing your scorpions, I'm like, well, maybe we can get the cats together next week.
Yeah.
Well, Matt Finish, thank you so much for being on Showboys, for lending your time, for lending your opinions. And I know I already said this, but I mean, on stage, I love watching you perform. And I really do have a deep respect for anybody who has a high standard and also holds themselves to it as well. So thank you for sharing yourself, your talent, and your standards and your scorpions today.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you, everyone else, for listening to another episode of Showboys. Make sure you tune in next week, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye. You want to say bye?
Oh, goodbye, all you hobbyists. And I guess the few professionals out there. Bye.
Oh my God, bye. Thank you for listening to Showboys. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you didn't like it,
you are a whore, darling.